Hey, what's up everybody? It's Justin. In this one, I'm going to be showing you how to start a blank Django project. It's actually one of our more popular blog posts, so we wanted to put it in a little video to make it even easier and maybe give some more context of what's going on. We're actually going to show you two ways on how to go about doing exactly this. So without further ado, let's jump in. Okay, so what we're going to be using in this video is this guide right here. So when you go to that link, you're going to see a step-by-step guide to do all of this. You can absolutely use that as the main source. In fact, long-term, that it will be the main source because things about Django might change. There might be something wrong with the video. So of course, let us know in the comments of this guide how we might improve it or if you get stuck in any particular area. Now, the reason we're doing this in the first place is because yeah, it's a popular post, but also we're getting some questions on it that shouldn't happen unless you're just coming to this post for the first time. So we kind of want to solve that problem by having this video on showing you exactly how this is actually done. Lastly, we will actually set up this project in Sublime text. This is a text editor. It's what we're going to use. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to use it. It's just something that I've been a big fan of for a long time. So I recommend using that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to make sure my system is at least set up enough to get this going. First of all, I'll type out Python version. Just like that, I've got Python version 2.7 as a default. And then if I do Python 3 version, this is the Python 3 version I'm working with. Now, your system might only be Python 3. It might only be Python 2. This mostly will work for either version, although I do recommend at this point that you upgrade to Python 3.6, and we talk about that in the installation anyway. The next thing is I want to make sure when I type out pip that I actually get the command found. So in my case, the command is not found. So if I did sudo easy install pip, this should actually install pip for me, right? Like, there's a good chance that if you went through the setup guide that you actually already set up pip or you already have it installed on your system. If you don't, then make sure that you have that updated. So now if I do pip, I will see something like this. And if I do pip freeze on my system, I'll probably actually see other things already installed. Okay, so now that we've got those things out of the way, what I want to do is I want to make a folder or a directory where I'm going to store all of my Django and or just Python projects. See, what I like to do, and this is my personal philosophy, I think it's the best way to do it, is I like to make a virtual environment that holds all of my project requirements in one place, and then also the project. So every time I start a new project, I also create a new virtual environment for that specific project. I think that part is key because it makes your environments that much easier to work with. Now, remember how I did pip freeze and I had all this stuff already on here? Now, your system might have nothing on it, or it also might have a bunch of things on here. I mean, I see something like south. South is no longer used, right? So there's a lot of old packages on here that my system is just simply out of date. The entire system itself is simply out of date. So that's where virtual environments come in. Virtual environments allow a pocket of our system to be up to date to whatever our project's requirements are. Hopefully you already know that. If you don't, just a little refresher. So we're going to make that folder that we want to actually hold all of our projects. And I'm going to list where I'm at. And I see that I already have a folder called dev. So I'm going to make a new folder just to show you what I'm doing. But I'm going to make a new folder called dev2. Windows users, you would use dir, and again, hopefully you know that too, unless you're using PowerShell, in which case ls works. So if we do make dir dev2, I can see that I have a new dev2 folder or dev folder that I just go into, and obviously there's nothing in there. And where are we? So we've done step 1. And of course, in my case, it's just a little bit different. I just added a number to it. And this folder can exist wherever you like. You can put it on Dropbox if you want to. You could put it on Google Drive. You can put it in a lot of different places. Now, I can't say for sure that it's going to work with Dropbox or Google Drive, but it's worth trying, especially if you want to sync these things together without using something like Git. Okay, so now we're going to make our virtual environment. But what I want to do is make sure virtual env is installed on my regular computer. So if you're using Python 2, which is 2.7 is showing up right here, I have it there. I can also use Python 3 by using this. Now again, depending on what version you installed, there's a good chance that pip 3 is going to install wherever, right? So this actually installed it or is looking for it in Python 2.7. That shouldn't really be a problem because of what we're about to do is virtual env and then -p Python 3. Now, if you only have Python 3 installed, you don't have to do this -p. It would naturally use Python version 3. But I have both versions installed, so I have to use this flag to say what version of this virtual environment I'm going to use. And then I can give my virtual env a name. In my case, I actually named it CFE Home, but I did it a little bit different. So I can actually type out CFE Home, and I'll say CFE Home method 2. Now, this is where that extra context comes in the video that's just kind of lost in the guide. I press enter, and I'm going to let that do its thing for just a moment. And I'm also going to now do what the guide did, which was make dir CFE Home and cd into CFE Home. So we'll just go ahead and make dir in there. And if I pwd, I see exactly where I am. If I go back and list things out, I see that I have 2 places now. Okay, but let's go back into CFE Home. And I'll just do virtual env -p, and I want Python 3. And then I'll just use that period at the end to actually make the virtual environment within the folder I'm in. So again, it's doing the exact same thing. If I actually open this up, what I can see is literally the exact same thing. Both of these are the 100% the same. It's just how I actually created them is slightly different, right? So in this one, I actually named the folder. It creates a brand new folder, where in this one, I had to create the folder, go into the folder, and then, run virtual environment in there. So now what I do is I do source bin/activate, and I do pip freeze again. Now again, this should show us nothing. It might show you one thing, and that's okay, but just in general, it won't show you anything's installed because our virtual environment is now a little pocket of our main system. And if I open a new terminal window, we can see that again. If I do pip freeze here, I see that I've got all this other stuff installed, but pip freeze inside of my virtual environment doesn't do that. Now, of course, when you activate it for Linux and Mac users, it's source bin/activate. For Windows users, it's scripts/activate like that. I think PowerShell is actually the same as source bin/activate. If you know that answer, please let us know in the comments below. And then we scroll down. Now we're going to start our blank Django project. We're going to start that first one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just run pip install Django. Now I can be explicit and say the version number like we did here, or I could just do the most recent version of Django by leaving out the version number. And I think the most recent is 1.11.5, but let's put it at 1.11.3 to see just what you would do to upgrade to the latest version as well. We might as well show you that too. So much like when we created the virtual environment folder, we're going to do the same thing with Django. So I'm going to just do make dir src and change into src. So src is the source. This is where we're putting our project source. This is where I'm putting my Django project. Now, you don't have to do it this way. Of course, all of this stuff, you could do it in a different way. But when it comes to having other developers look at your code, it's good to have it uniform in a way that they might expect. So having it inside of a virtual environment is one thing. And then the next thing is really just having it inside of the src folder or a source folder. That will make a lot more sense for anyone jumping into this project. And you can see that being true by looking at other people's projects as well. So now that we have Django installed, as we can see with pip freeze, we can see that here's Django. It's 1.11.3. Very cool. We can actually start our Django project. So again, I'm inside of that src folder. So I'm just going to do django-admin, start project, and just put a period here. But I also still need to give the project a name because Django, you have to actually name the project. So I'm going to name it CFE Home. And I did it in a different order than this. So let's actually see if that works. I press enter. It doesn't. You actually have to have the order correct, right? So we say Django admin, start project, CFE home, and then period. Press enter, and there's a good chance the project was created. We'll come back to that in just a second. But notice that I used a different command than here. You actually don't have to use .py. The newer versions of Django, you can just write django-admin, and that should actually work. And it should work on your system as well. So if you had any issues with that, please let us know. Windows users, in some cases, you might have to do something like this, or you might even have to write out Python in front of that and then do this stuff. But I think just Django-admin without the .py will work. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to set up my settings modules. Now this is mainly for using local and production, right? So when you go live, when you actually bring your project to a live system, you still want to test locally, but you want to have different settings for your live project. Hopefully that is well understood, but that is definitely something that you're going to want to do. Now, for Windows and for Windows users, this part might actually not work out for you. So we're going to actually do it not using this. If you're on Linux and Mac, you can try this out, but we're basically going to be doing the same thing, just again, giving you extra context or different context on how we're going to go about doing this. So I'm actually going to bring my project into Sublime Text now. This is a really good time to bring it in. So I'll go to Add Folder to Project, and then we're going to go to that folder that I created, which was the dev folder, which is in my root user folder. Dev2, CFE home, open, and I bring in the virtual environment too. I like having the virtual environment in there as well. And then we're going to go ahead and save this project. Save it into my dev again. Oops, we want to put it here. CFE dev2, and inside of that project, CFE home. Okay, so that's just a shortcut to open things up. So now we're going to make our settings modules for local and production. All right, so what I need to do is create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it settings. To turn it into a Python module, I make a new file and call it init.py. Init.py means that I can now do stuff like on other files from CFE home, from Django.conf import settings. Django will actually work with that. You can also even do from .settings in other files to actually use this Python module. That's really how it works. Okay, so now what we need to do is actually change our old one to something different. So I'm just going to rename this to settings-old, and then copy this and go into a new file here and call it local.py. We'll paste this file in, and we need to do some changes, but I want to at least show you that we've already done some of this stuff here. I haven't changed everything in here, but I will. So just in general, we are doing this create settings module. I'm just not following this to the T because it's not necessary. One of the things I need to do is change this base directory. See, because I actually brought it down one level, so I need to bring it up one. That is, I put the settings module now in a settings folder, right? So I put local.py is now in a settings folder, so that means it's in a different directory. So we just have to do this. If that's confusing at all, please let us know in the comments below. But now we've got our local settings there. So in my init file, I'm just going to go ahead and do try from.local import all. And then we'll do accept pass. So this init file is on my settings module, right? And what this is allowing me to do is essentially say this settings folder looks like settings.py now, except it's only importing all of the things from local.py. So let's save it, and we can actually run a little test here by doing python manage.py migrate. And what do you know? It migrates everything. And the more important part is when I collapse down CFE home, db.sqlite3 is right where manage.py is. So the base directory or the base dir of your project is right where manage.py is. And that's why we actually had to do that. So since we now have the local settings set up, I'm going to go ahead and make the production settings. So production.py, I'm just going to copy all of local.py, paste it in here, and turn debug to being false. And then inside of init, what I'm going to do is put from.production import all. Okay. And I also might want to have one more file. I'm not sure if this is in the guide or not, but I'm going to just do it, and I'll explain why in just a moment. And I'll put a file called base.py. So base.py right inside of here. And that's going to copy local.py. Okay. Paste it in here, save it. All right. Now we have our project going. We have 3 different settings configurations. That's really what it is. And if we want to change any of those configurations, we just need to change the import here. So let's go ahead and jump back into the guide and see what's going on, see where we're at. We created those 3 files, and we've created, luckily base.py is actually in here. That's good. I'm glad that that was originally in there. And then we now need to talk just generally how and why we did these 3 different files. Well, when you go live, you might not bring over your local file. So this means that it's going to go off of the production file by default. But if you go live and for some reason you lose your local file, it's kind of cumbersome to go back and make sure that your production file is updated, right? It takes some time to do that, especially if you use something like Git, like version control. You basically want to have 2 copies of your local settings. So that's where base.py comes in. It's kind of like a copy of your local settings just in case you go live and you lose your local py or you needed to reference it or something like that. It's just a shortcut to do that. It's not 100% necessary, but it is a nice shortcut. But then also, if you work with a big group of people, they can just copy the base.py and get all of those settings that you may have in here. So this is where we're now ready to kind of work with our Django project in general. So the next few things I'm going to do is just go in and do my optional installations, things that I might end up using. So stuff like on Heroku, I would install basically a way to hook up your Django project into a Postgres SQL database. That's what this package is all about. And then also GUnicorn and stuff like that. Again, if you're using Heroku, you can do some other installations like Crispy Forms and Pillow. These things are fairly common, but it's stuff that we usually cover inside of any given Django project anyway. And then finally, I'm going to create a requirements.txt file, and that's just going to have all of my requirements for this project, right? So that's the other important part of having your own virtual environment. It's really cool. So I mentioned all of this stuff, and I said that we were going to show you 2 ways on how to go about doing this. Well, the other way is just using the Coding for Entrepreneurs command line interface. The reason I showed you the long way first is so you can appreciate the faster way, which is using the CFE command line interface. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to close this out, open up a new virtual environment inside of Dev2, and I'll just say make dir, and I'll call it CFE CLI, and we'll cd into CFE CLI. And I'll do virtual env, oops, spell correctly on the first place. Okay, virtual env Python 3 period, creating that virtual environment again. And then we'll just do source bin/activate pip install CFE. And depending on what version of Django we have on here, it's going to come up. It goes to the latest version of Django. I didn't actually show you how to upgrade it in the last part, so you can actually do pip install Django and then whichever version you want. So we did 11.3, but you can also just do upgrade it to the latest version as well. Okay, so we've got the CFE command line interface, and all I really have to do here is do CFE --new, and this actually it will do several things for us. I think you probably have to have Git installed. Yeah, so you will need to have Git installed, otherwise I think it will give you an error to actually install it. And what we're going to do here is it's actually creating our Django project for us. It might take a moment to actually run it, but now what we see is this new folder called backend. Now, I did say that we had it in SRC before, and it's still in SRC, but we just put it in another directory called backend, and then we change into SRC Python manage.py, migrate, and I have all of the sort of things that I would need. If I open this up, we're not going to actually add it to Sublime Text, but if I open it up and look in CFE Home, Settings, I see I've got still my base, local, and production. And then I have my requirements.txt. Notice my Django version is an older version of Django, so we might even upgrade it. So pip install Django and -- upgrade. Okay. And that won't really break things. That's just something that we have as far as getting this going. Now, that's a very simple and quick way to create this exact same project. So you can use that on pretty much any of our projects going forward that use at least Django version 1.11. So that's pretty much everything from here until we start doing, the next version of Django. But even with the next version of Django, there's a good chance that all this stuff's going to work. And there's even a better chance that we will actually update this guide when that happens. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in future videos. Let me know what you think about this one in the comments. I realize I went sort of fast and because I'm kind of thinking that some of you have already worked through parts of this, and then I'm also thinking that if you're a beginner, you might have to use the guide anyway. So giving you that extra context is what it's all about. So you might not watch it and do it at the same time. Yeah. Thanks for watching. My name is Justin. Super excited to have you watching as well. Thanks so much.